everybody, and thanks for joining tonight. I think that we will probably do best if we have a we'll probably do best if we have an interactive conversation. You know, if we have a nice chat together, and I know from the pre-chat that we were having before we started this video and this session that some of you have been experimenting. Some of you are new to AI or vibe coding or software development in general, but some have experience. So I want to encourage everybody to share that experience. And if you've got a question, if I'm going too fast, or if there's something that I say that doesn't make sense, please raise your hand, interrupt, ask the question. Keep in mind, we are recording this for YouTube, so we do want to have a nice video. We don't want our conversations to take too many digressions or whatnot, but I want this to be a discussion. I think you folks have stuff to share and information to share just as well as I do. So I will start out by sharing my screen to the folks online so they can see what we are doing. Okay, so I will share my entire screen. Hopefully that means that you folks will be able to see everything that I do over here. If anything happens that you are suddenly not able to see what I'm doing, folks on the chat, please, again, just jump in and let me know, type some stuff, and we'll keep that in mind. Okay, so I think that's everything I wanted to say to get started, except that we're going to today to talk about vibe coding and AI-assisted software development in general. I want to talk about the whole continuum of AI-assisted coding, from pure vibe coding all the way to what I think we could call AI-assisted software engineering. I want to be interactive, and I want everybody to get as much out of this as possible. But I want to start with a little bit of history. Okay, I want to put AI-assisted programming in context. And so the slide that I'm sharing right now is a little brief history of some highlights in the history of software development and the evolution of software development. So I mentioned some of these things already, but I want you to look at this list and think about that period between 1962 and 1983. Okay, it's a 20-year period. At the beginning of that period, the input into the computer was through punch cards. At the beginning of that period, there were no high-level languages. The Fortran compiler was something new in 1962. There was no source code control. There was very limited concept even of like source code files as distinct from each other. Like, it was very, very basic stuff, you know. Computers were rudimentary, and so were the software tools. 20 years later, and 1983 is the date we've got on the slide, the Turbo Pascal IDE was the first integrated development environment. It was the programming language, your editor, your tooling, your runtime, everything was there for you, okay? A huge improvement in just 20 years. Think about the productivity difference between having to punch out cards and take a big stack of punched out cards that represent your program and submit that to be run. And then you get your output back and you find out if you had errors in your code, or if your code did what it wanted. And I want you to think about that programmer in 1962 with a stack of punch cards, or her stack of punch cards, and what that would mean for how they had to think about everything that they were doing, how much planning they had to do, how much time they had to take before they did anything with code. And compare that to that programmer in 1983 who's got their Apple II and their copy of Turbo Pascal, and they're able to write code in a high-level language and see the results of their coding almost immediately. There's a huge productivity jump between 1962 and 1983. And similarly, if you look at the next sort of 20-year period between 1983 and say 2001, in between those two dates, we developed a whole programming paradigm, object-oriented programming, a way of combining code and data that made it so much easier for humans to reason about the programs that they were writing. We got the World Wide Web. I was a programmer before the World Wide Web, and those of you who are a little younger than me, imagine what it's like if the only resources that you have are in your noggin and the books on your shelf, and how that changes the way you're going to approach programming. Totally different. In the mid-90s, we got Java, which is write once, run anywhere, which was now we expect programs to run on every computer and phone and device in the planet. But in 1995, this was a revolution. The idea that you could write one piece of software and run it on multiple machines in multiple environments. And so the point that I'm making here, because again, you can then jump from 2001 to 2025 and see that there has been a vast revolution in productivity. But I posed the question on the slide. Is AI supported development an evolution in developer productivity, or is it a revolution? Is this something that is such a change that we have to worry that it's going to destroy our industry, that we have to worry that there won't be jobs for software developers anymore, that these skills don't matter? I don't think so. I think my own answer is that I think it's an evolutionary change. I don't think that the productivity boost of AI-assisted development is fully understood yet. I don't know that we really have a bead on exactly how much benefit, how much gain you get from using AI in your coding. And partly I think that's because so many of us are working in our own anecdotal context. And context is so important here because some environments, some contexts, some workflows, AI is solving 90% of your problems, and it's making things so much faster and so much easier. And then in other scenarios, LLMs and AI-assisted software development don't help very much at all today. And I think that these gains are really unevenly distributed right now. It's going to take time for that to change. I want to put a marker down and say that I think that we will soon see programming languages and libraries that are designed for LLMs first and people second. And if you think about how much advantage there would be in having a programming language that is designed for LLMs to understand it and to make it easy, structured and simple and consistent, and how much value there might be in that. So I don't think that the gains, like the story of the productivity gains of AI in software development, are totally known yet. But what I want to do today is talk about the experiences I've had in the last 12 months learning and working with this stuff, and give you a sense of, I think, where some of the boundaries are, and where we can start to apply some principles to our choices around AI-supported development. So there is a definition. Back in February, Andrei Karpathy tweeted and defined vibe coding. I think the important thing here is that the definition of vibe coding includes like not looking at the code at all. Okay, so vibe coding as it's described here is purely you're purely interacting functionally with the LLM. You're responding based on its output and telling it to change. You're not looking at the code. You're not talking to it about architecture. You're not inquiring about how anything works under the hood. You're just going with the flow. Okay. You can do that. So who here has done that? Who in the room has done that? Okay. I've done it. You've done it. Okay.
I've more like interacted with it.
Okay. All right.
Looked at the code and made decisions.
I interacting, but still, because I do most of the web design, so sometimes I see how I use ChatGPT only. I see how sometimes simple tasks become more it makes more complicated, like ChatGPT overcomplicated it. And only because of my knowledge I can fix it. And I even saying, hey, why you change 10 lines of code if it's only one? But it happens. But say that's probably, yeah, for me it's something new, because I just graduated from the college, and my professors always been against the AI because they want us to realize and understand everything. So for me right now, I just looking for some different position, and I check that more companies actually they want you to know how to use AI. They want you to make a process faster, and if you have this ability to interact with AI and finish the job like in shorter period of time, you will be valuable. It's wow. It's something new. And it has some, as you said, it has some benefits. And the same time, sometimes, especially if in the end somewhere appears the error, and you need to look in for all the lines of codes, and you realize, oh my gosh, what did you do?
Right. And I think like you raised so many good points there. The like that moment when you see it start to get away from you, and when the code starts to be something that you don't fully understand, and it's right, and there's a line there, and like you have to decide. That's like a moment where, am I going on over the cliff with this thing, or am I going to stay
Yes,
here in
yes.
control? Yeah, you know what
This
I'm
is
talking
this
about.
is and you're gonna cry and saying that you're not developer at all. Gonna crush your computer and start over because you don't know where it is. You really don't know.
Yes, I've had the experience of vibe coding myself into a corner, deleting everything and starting over, right? It happens. And I try not to let that happen anymore, but it definitely happens. So I asked ChatGPT to make an image for me to illustrate this slide. It did an okay job, except the laptop screens are on backwards. I don't really understand that one. So we've been kind of talking around this a little bit. I think there is a continuum here. And I like, to me, the difference, the fundamental difference in are you doing one or are you doing the other is, are you using the AI as an amplifier of your own expertise, or are you leaning and relying on its expertise? You know, and to the extent that to which you are leaning on the AI, you're vibe coding. And I think there is like room for a mix, and sometimes you know you're working with a part of the system that you maybe think is not as critical, or is more easily replaced, or is less enmeshed with the rest of your system, and you think maybe I'm going to vibe code this part. So that's a possibility, right? But we need a rubric. Like we need a way to decide, when are we going to vibe code? When are we going to take a more serious approach to this, right? And so I came up with sort of a rubric that I use for that. So these are some of the benefits and limitations that I see for vibe coding. Like, one is, if you are truly going to be just typing your instructions into the computer and then taking hands off and working and letting whatever results be your solution, there's a real low limit on complexity, right? With an asterisk on that. You cannot ask for very complex solutions unless similar solutions are endemic in the training data. So I'll give you some examples of that when we actually get to the demo. But like, there's some stuff that is fairly complicated, but it's such a like it's very commonly implemented algorithm. It's something that's used in classrooms. It's there's many open source implementations, and so some things that are pretty complicated, you can strike gold just because there's so much code in the training data. The other thing is that the life of this stuff is short. Like, you cannot expect an app that you produce without like taking any interest in the code itself or how it works. You can't expect it to last very long. Something is going to change, something in the environment, something in the requirements of your software, something is going to change, and your ability to support that change is going to be zero. So the lifetime, you can't expect a long life, and the less that you know, the less you can do. The more you know about software development, the more you understand about computer science in the abstract, the better you're going to be able to interact with the computer and solve problems. And so I'm going to make a suggestion to everybody who's here and everybody who's online. You're probably familiar with the Harvard CS50 course. It's a free online course that is an introduction to computer science. Well, they've recently introduced CS50B, which is business oriented. And it is an introduction to programming and data concepts for business people. I think that somebody who is not a person with a software development background who wants to get into vibe coding and doesn't want to spend, months and years maybe picking up the basics of the field, that hour and a half lecture, the introductory hour and a half lecture, is going to get you a long way. And if you actually complete that whole course, it's going to give you a lot of tools that you can use in this process and in this work. You can get working software crazy fast. I think like something that I think is really cool, and anybody who knows how to write code understands what I'm talking about. There is a superpower to being able to like write a little code to solve a problem. To write some throwaway code to solve a problem that you have right now. I need to take this spreadsheet and I need to fill it in with X, Y, Z, or I need to translate it into this format, or I want to solve some small problem with a bunch of files on my computer. Being able to write code means that you can use tools like your operating system scripting language like PowerShell on Windows or Bash on Linux. You can use that to solve problems and automate the operating system, right? And that like little bit of personal software, being able to like look at a task and say, this is a task that'll take me 2 hours, but I can write the code in 20 minutes, and being able to make that judgment and like, switch between like, I'm going to do it by hand, I'm going to write the code. Being able to do that is a real benefit and to anybody. And I think anybody can benefit. Anybody who works with an office environment with computers can benefit from knowing a little bit of code. Vibe coding brings that personal software to everybody. Anybody who can ask the AI a question now has access to that kind of solution, right? I've got 100 images I need to crop, right? ChatGPT, write me a program for my Windows desktop that will let me crop all these photos in a folder, and it'll do it for you. So I think it's really important to not discount what you can do with vibe coding and not to discount the value of it just because I think that it is limited in what it can do, right? That doesn't mean that it's worthless. It certainly means that you need to understand the context and what you're deploying. And so this is what I was referring to a few minutes ago. This is the rubric the loose rubric that I use. So to kind of make this judgment. So there's a chart on the screen here with 3 sort of swim lanes, right? And I think that the attributes of each of those swim lanes are what you have to think about with your particular problem to determine whether or not vibe coding is viable. So what I mean by that is you need to ask yourself about the users of the program. Is it just for me? Is this something I'm going to distribute to a whole group of people? Is it something that I expect 100 people to use? Very clearly, if it's just for you, that would be viable for vibe coding. And if you're building it for the long term, you probably want a little bit more certainty. You probably want to better understand what you're giving to those 100 people than just something that you vibe coded. If you're working with a piece of data that's on your computer, a piece of data that you control, then vibe coding is viable. If you're working with data that is a little more sensitive, maybe it's business data or something, you have to think more carefully about how will this program be used. And finally, if you're using sensitive data or people's personal and private information, you absolutely should be not vibe coding. You need to understand exactly what you're building because you have legal and ethical responsibilities to your users' data that you will not be able to fully uphold if you don't understand what you've done. How long is this code going to live? I just need it for 5 minutes. Vibe code, right? This is something that I expect to deliver value to my business for 10 years. don't vibe code. Is this something that I am going to work on just by myself? Or do I need a larger team? Do I need a larger team who are all going to make contributions to this software? I don't know that you can really have team vibe coding. I don't know what that would look like. If anybody tries it, let me know. And finally, what is the future maintenance of this thing likely to be? If it's a solution with zero maintenance, right, then vibe code. If it's something that you expect to require a lot of maintenance, now why would software require a lot of maintenance? Well, if it is using cryptography, if it is using some libraries that are sensitive and related to security that would require frequent updates for security patches and whatnot, if security matters to you and you're going to need to ensure that your software can be in compliance with whatever your security requirements are, you can't really vibe code it. So, I think there is easy, like I've given you some easy examples on either side of the fence. In between, it can be a little mushier. You can use your judgment, and I think it's really a choice between like how much control am I willing to sacrifice to the computer. I think there is really limited circumstances where you're purely going to hand control right over to the system and not do anything at all. Okay, so let's talk about the tools. There are a number of tools. We were chatting a little bit before we started today about some of these. GitHub Copilot and Klein are two code generation tools. These are plugins for Visual Studio Code. What you see in the screenshot is an example of interacting with GitHub Copilot. Chatbots, which I think everybody has interacted with before, ChatGPT, Qwen is the leading Chinese model. Mistral is the leading European model. These chatbots offer a different experience, right? Interactive chat versus a document-oriented, like solution-oriented code generation tool. Chatbots, I use them for code generation quite a bit. I find that I use these tools in combination quite a bit. One pattern that I use quite a bit is talking to a chatbot about the design of a piece of software, what I need it to do, having an interactive session, asking the chatbot, what am I missing from my design? What are the elements that we should be considering? And deciding on technologies with the LLM, like collaboratively, and then getting a statement, a set of instructions that we can give to a code generator. That is a really powerful way to approach these tools. You can do that you can skip the chatbot step and just jump into your code generator and interact with it like a chatbot, but it's not really the same. It's not built for that. It's not the same kind of interaction. And anyway, I find that to be a really nice way to do it. And then there are IDEs that are more AI first. Copilot Workspace and Cursor are two examples. I don't really have experience with this stuff, but I wanted to put it on a slide so that you could see it. And something I think we mentioned before too, well understood or frequently solved problems is a major sweet spot for LLM coding. And I want to emphasize that point. And I know Randy is on the line, and Randy Topliff is on the video call, and he works with me. He's a lead developer at Parallel 42 Systems, and Randy is curious about LLMs, and he works with them, of course. But in his professional work, in his day-to-day, Randy has not been able to find utility in these tools because Randy is an expert, experienced, working software developer who works within his area of expertise every day, right? So if you are in that situation, the only thing that talking to the AI is going to do is slow you down, right? Where I think that, you're on the line, Randy, so if you want to type something or turn on your mic and say it, you can if I'm misrepresenting you. But I think that where these things break down is that if you are like if you are only able to get from the AI the kind of support that would equalize between you and an experienced developer, then you're really not getting anything that would help that experienced developer, right? And I think thanks, Randy. Randy says I'm spot on. And I think that that's an interesting challenge, although I would push back also and say that we will get to a point where these tools have these capabilities. They need more expertise than an experienced software developer. They need to be smarter and have access to richer data than a typical software developer. And at that point, I'm waiting for the day when Randy says it's faster to use Copilot, because that will be a day that marks a major improvement in LLM capability. So the question that I think is really, really important, though, is I ask about Randy and I ask about myself, how will people get the experience that they need to be able to work with these tools without having to go through decades of daily coding? How do you teach people? I don't think that you necessarily need to type anything to be an effective software developer, but you need to have an understanding of the problems and an understanding of how to solve them. And you need to be able to describe the system in detail. Now, whether you're describing the system in detail through code or some other way, I don't know that it matters. I think ultimately there is probably not very more efficient ways to represent these ideas than code. So ultimately, I think we're going to be always working with some tool like this. I'm getting a little over my skis now and getting a little philosophical, but so I'll try to escape by just saying that I think that you, as a practitioner, as a developer, as a technologist, you really want to dig in here. And you really want to investigate, and don't be too comfortable. Don't be too quick to take on some opinion that you see that makes you feel good about your job or your career or your position. I think it's really important to investigate these tools and work with these tools because they are evolving and changing. And I don't think that AI is going to destroy software development, but I think it will destroy some of the software industry. Just as every past innovation has destroyed some of the software industry and created new opportunities. And I focus on the new opportunities, but you do have to be paying attention. You do have to be nimble. Okay, so a couple things I want to talk about. I have a couple of case studies for you. Back in 2011, I released a simple abstract game called Neutron for the iPhone. Okay. In 2024, this was what I did as my first AI software coding experience. I decided to port Neutron. It's small. It's not a very big game. It was maybe a few thousand lines of code all in. It wasn't a big piece of software. It was written in Objective-C. So I knew that porting it to JavaScript was going to be a little bit hairy, just in that it's a very different programming paradigm. And it's not, you can't just start at line 1 and sort of translate each line down to line 100 of your source file or whatever and solve the problem. And this is a piece of software that I worked a lot on. I really enjoyed it. I know a lot about it. I felt really good about my level of depth in understanding this software. So I thought it was a really good first try for me. So I used the pattern of prompting the system, asking it for something, starting by talking about the project. This is what I want to do. I want to bring this code into the modern era, and these are the source files, and what do you think? And passed in some of the Objective-C code. And at this time, there was, you didn't have the tools that you have now to be able to like give your whole repository to the AI. So I had to pass it snippets of code or files, one file at a time, and going back and forth conversationally. And what I experienced was that the first few days, like the first couple of hours serially, but the first few days with this thing were just amazing, so empowering. I felt like I had wings on my feet. I could every step I was just flying forward. But then came time to integrate everything and to resolve bugs and to deal with the issues. And a couple things that I learned. One thing is that you've got to welcome.
Oh,
You've got to really keep an eye on your context window. Okay. So when I say that, does everybody know what I'm talking about? The context window is the information that the AI knows. Okay, welcome. So if you type in some information and you pass it to a chatbot, the chatbot now has what you typed in context. If you give it a file, if you upload a file, it now has that file in its context. As you converse in one chat session, that context grows. Every LLM, every AI has a limit to how much context it can manage. At the time that we're talking about here in 2024, context available on ChatGPT was a lot smaller than it was now. And what happens when you run out of context is that you've got 10 pounds of oranges in a 5-pound bag, right? So how is that going to work? The software has to decide, am I going to truncate the beginning? Am I going to rip some stuff out of the middle? Or am I going to ignore everything you tell me from now on, right? It has to do something. It has to start taking out pieces of context. And so what would happen is you get to a certain point and the LLM starts forgetting some of the critical things you told it at the beginning. And because of the way that we build up information, when we communicate with these things, the foundational information is often shared at the beginning. So I had to learn to keep an eye on that and understand, like, get a feel for how when the conversation was going to start to not be fruitful anymore. And what you want to do is you want to get the machine to summarize its context so that you can pass it to a clean, fresh session and keep going. So that was a lesson I learned from this. I also learned that LLMs are horrible debuggers. They are horrible. And I think that vibe coding, this is a place where it falls down. If the problem in your code is not an FAQ, right? If it's not a frequently encountered problem, LLMs are terrible at solving code problems. But they hate to tell you they can't do something. Like, they hate to tell you they can't do something. So you will sit there. I sat there and churned for like 15 minutes on a bug, on an error message, and I was like, this thing doesn't know what it's talking about, because it just said the same thing twice. And so it's really important to not waste your time. I note that this took about 15 hours, and if I was doing this port today with everything I know and all my experience, I would expect it to take me far less than that, a couple hours maybe. Tests are important. You want to use tests, and getting test-driven development is a great way to make the LLM take the time to do it right. So it's a paradigm that you may or may not like. People have different perspectives on it, but getting the AI to write the tests first is actually a really powerful way to guide the AI.
There's a major caveat there. An AI has a tendency to write a test that will pass the code.
Mm-hmm.
So if you say, make me a program that does this and write a test that proves it does it, it'll just make a test that says passes.
You do have to be careful of that.
Really?
You do have to be careful of that.
It'll make some facsimile of what you're looking for, but it won't actually care if it actually checks. It just wants something that works. And it's like logic says this goes with that, and it
absolutely,
passes.
absolutely cheating. Hallucination is like one of our biggest problems, right? And in AI is like hallucination is right throughout all the different aspects of it. I think we actually get less of it in software development because our work is so cut and dried, and it's usually glaringly obvious when something gets hallucinated. But yeah, it'll make stuff up.
So test generation is very useful, but you got to be like extra careful. Every single line is actually what you wanted to test.
That's a great point. I appreciate that. So, go ahead.
I think it's because like the AI is like it's designed to like please you and like satisfy like your whatever you want.
Yeah.
So it's almost like how like performance indicators and like metrics in like businesses are like like once you start measuring them, they're not useful anymore.
Right.
Like
People
for like
start work.
hospitals, they start like gaming the system.
Yeah.
Like for hospitals, like they will say like these like this doctor has like 100% like surgery like survival or something. But what happens is like the doctors just don't operate on like people who have like maybe like a 90% chance, and that's not a good thing.
Right, exactly. They want to juice their stats, and so I think you're right that the LLM can sometimes be susceptible to that too. So this was a really interesting experience. If you want to see what half Objective-C, half JavaScript looks like, check out this code base. It's pretty interesting. It does work well and it is a lot of fun, but this was a good experience for me. That was my first experience with AI-supported software development. And so right away, I think that I was tempered in my expectations for vibe coding. I knew that it was going to be something that you needed to bring something to it and not just expect it to give everything to you. Okay, so tool-assisted query. Now this is a solution, and again, it's on GitHub. You can look at the code. This is personal software that I made, right? We talked about the definition of personal software, software for your own use case. It's a Python module for my computer. My computer, the LLMs on it, the software that runs the LLMs on my computer, and the specific MCP server that I use, right? The reason that I'm bringing this up is that this is one that I did vibe code, and that I nuked my code 3 or 4 times. The tool-assisted query module is not what I was trying to build. What I was trying to build was a deep research tool. We all know what this is, right? Deep research, there's many LLM-supported research tools out there where essentially it is like you use a bit of recursion. The LLM has to evaluate its own results and try to improve it, and you sometimes use different models to look at. Anyway, I was trying to build my own deep research. And what I found is that that is a level of complexity. It's like just a bridge too far for vibe coding. You just can't do it. What would happen is I would get something that was kind of functional to do this, to do the LLM calls and the tool supported stuff. And then I would start to move on to my other components. Okay, now I want to do the research part. But what would happen is that the LLM doesn't have boundaries. It doesn't think, oh, that part of the work is done for now, and we should check with Doug before we change it. Like, it doesn't think like that. And so what kept happening is that my code base was mush, and my research code was all mixed with my tool calling code, and like nothing that any of us would design, nothing that like looked good. So I tried a little bit more direction, okay? And I decided to break this problem down into smaller pieces. This is a component, the tool-assisted module, like tool-assisted query module. It's a component I need for like 100 different things, right? So I vibe coded it, and I tried to get a quality solution. It works well. I went back to the well a lot here. This tool works really well, and by making it into a module, now I bring this module into my deep research code, and the LLM doesn't touch it because it's a Python module that's external to the software. So by focusing on one piece, one component at a time, I can vibe code a bigger solution and then stick them together like Lego bricks, right? This is not so different from the software development paradigms that we have used for decades, right? Like it's how we solve big complex problems by breaking it down into smaller, simpler ones. But it's an approach, this specific approach, I found opens the door to reasonably complex vibe coded solutions, right? You just I just don't know how you get anything over a few hundred lines of code without taking some kind of like at least getting it to like see the boundaries within the software. However, you have to do that, whether it's, by using system tools or whatever. If you don't have some kind of separation so that the AI is working on only one thing, you're going to have problems. So this is my long list of lessons, things that I've learned about vibe coding. I think people make way too much out of model choice. Okay, people make way too much out of, are you using the fastest, latest, best model? I don't know. I don't think it's always true. I think the quality varies between them. And it's important to find a tool that works for you in your use case with your challenges. I advise people to experiment, try different models. Don't make the assumption that, the biggest name or the highest benchmark score is going to be your problem solver. I think it's really important to document your assumptions and just write a bunch of documentation up front in general. The more that you think through the problem you want to solve, the more that you can articulate how you want the problem solved, the more the LLM can do for you. If you are specific about what you want, you're going to get something that's more usable and more useful. You want to have a plan to roll back. I talked about throwing stuff away. That's not ideal. Some AI assistants have checkpoints. Klein has checkpoints. You can use your source control tools to have a rollback within this stuff. Lots of different ways to do it. Save a copy and back it up somewhere. Just have a plan to go back to the previous version.
Cursor has like rollback built in.
Oh, nice. Oh, that's really cool.
So if you like prompt it something in like the chat and like you didn't like the results, you can like go back.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Decide how engaged you're going to be with the code ahead of time and change it by intention. So what I'm saying here is that you're not going to learn anything about your own capabilities if you are not consistent and thoughtful about the approach that you're taking. And so, for example, if you're going for pure vibes, you want efficiency, I want to type in a prompt and get a program out the other end, then don't start poking at individual lines of code without a reason, without thinking about why you're changing your approach, is what I'm trying to say. If you're working at a detail level and you decide to just like spray your questions and just say yes to whatever, like there is good reason to recalibrate at different points in the process of making software with an AI, to recalibrate. Ooh, I'm not feeling the vibes right now. I want to do things a little different. But you should be thinking about, like, you should be having some metacognition about your own state of mind while you're doing it. Really important to think about all of the things that could go wrong in your software. One of the things that I think makes, like, there is a great diagram in The Mythical Man Munch by Fred Brooks that talks about how the program that you write in the garage, the program you write at home, is like right here, and then there is like an exponential jump to the piece of software that you need to the level of complexity and challenge of writing a piece of software for a work group, for a department, for a group of people. And then there is an exponentially greater challenge beyond that of making a software product that can run anywhere, that can run in multiple environments, that can be updated remotely and all that stuff, right? And one of the main differences is that personal software, that lowest complexity, it runs on my machine, it does what I need it to do, it only really works in the happy path. It only works if all the files you need are there. It only works when the sun is in the right position in the sky and all the things are there. But as soon as one of those things is out of alignment, or there is an error, or your network is disconnected for a second or whatever, you need to think about what your software needs to do in all those contingencies if you want it to be able to act in those contingencies. The AI is so confident that it knows how to do everything. You have to be a very skeptical partner of the LLM. It's going to tell you if you ask it for, guidance software for the space shuttle, it's going to tell you it can do it, and it's going to give you something back. But I would not take off on it. You need to be skeptical. You need to verify. You need to not trust the AI. It's a good idea to start with your constraints, not your features. Okay. When you're talking to the machine about what you want to build, talk about what it can't do. Talk about what must never happen before you talk about what it's got to do. You'll get better results. And don't, unless you are really going for a one-shot vibe solution, don't disclose all of your requirements at once, because you will flood the machine with instructions. And I don't know like how much experience you folks have prompting AI, but if you ask it 10 questions in a row, you will get 10 quality answers. If you prompt it once with all 10 questions, you'll get 10 crappy answers. The same thing happens here, right? So we want to make sure that the LLM is focusing on one thing at a time and not giving it so many things to think about that it gets to pick, right? Make it focus. Okay. So let's do this. All right. Couple things that I want to show you guys. So I want to talk about Nebius. Okay. So Nebius is, they are the vendor that I use for buying AI time. Okay. When I get LLMs by the token, this is how I get it. And the reason is twofold. One, it's pretty cheap. Nebius is cheap. I think that my first month that I stopped paying my $20 a month to ChatGPT, I think my first month's bill was like $1.12 on Nebius. So
Wow.
it's I mean it's
using it a lot, or
I wasn't using it that much. Like and you'll see vibe coding is very costly. It chews up tokens, but Nebius is cheap. And the other thing about it is that it's European. So, you don't have to think about the Patriot Act or your data flowing through American servers. In most of these cases, I think there's like one or two cases where they have a US data center and they disclose that. But for the most part, this stuff all comes out of Europe. So the only downside to Nebius is that this is only open source. They only have open models. They don't have any of the commercial models. So they don't have anything except for the open source stuff from OpenAI. They don't sell you any of the other providers. I don't think that's a huge limitation, and they are very inexpensive. So I wanted to call that out before I brought my editor on the screen and we started doing some stuff. Okay. And so here's Visual Studio Code. Are we actually like in a folder? Let's make sure. No. Do it like this. Yeah. There we go. Okay. Okay. So Copilot. There's Copilot over there. We're going to close it up. I want to use Climb. Okay, so here's Climb. When you first log in, you're going to need to choose your AI provider, and they are a provider themselves. They also support OpenAI, Google, all the big people, all the big organizations, lots and lots of providers. So you decide who you want to sign up with, make sure they support it. And then you supply your API key and you can pick a model. So for our purposes, today we're going to use DeepSeek v3. Okay, DeepSeek v3 is not this is like a March 2024 model. It's not the most current. It's not the best. It's very good. But we're using it because it's very fast. So it's going to pump code out for us, which we want, right? So we're going to vibe code something. We're going to try something that is a little less insane though. Okay. Let's try, and we're going to try it without the complicated going back and forth with the AI because let's just try a one shot of create a single page HTML implementation of asteroids. Don't forget alien ships, period, and plan and go. Okay, looks good.
So one thing I like to do is like that plan that's being out there, I would tell it, put your plan in a markdown file in the docs directory. And then
Yeah.
before you proceed, I'm going to edit the plan.
That's a great pattern. Using a markdown file in your source tree to control the software development. Very often, I will create a client.md, and that's exactly what I use that for. Is that kind of instruction. I didn't do a very good job of instruction following. We asked for a single page HTML file. And it's not giving us a single page HTML file. Right, it's giving us JavaScript in a separate file, which is fine. I'm not going to argue with it, but for the purpose of this demo, it's whatever. But in practice, in the real world, if you specify a single page HTML file, that's what you need to get. So you would have to, in that case, you would have to like go back again to the well. So like the point that I'm trying to make here and what I'm trying to show you is that like these things are amazingly powerful and really cool, but they also like you need to bring some information of your own to it. You need to bring some knowledge. You need to bring some thinking. And what is it doing now? The syntax errors should go away. Well, it's on its own journey of problem solving. So hopefully it can do that for us while we chat. I don't find this to be a very satisfying way to work with the computer. Not just taking your hands completely off the wheel and letting it do whatever. Not only does it sometimes result in like, a real miss and a waste, but the chances that I'm gonna find some problem that I didn't expect to see are pretty high when I have no touch on the code, no interaction with the AI about anything that it's going to do. I think that like, and I'm being very extreme with this, like just, sort of saying yes to everything. There is a lot that you can do if you start to ask questions to the machine about the code and you start to ask for explanations for the things that you are doing, the things that you're working on. Particularly think it's powerful to ask it to explain itself and to explain to you something that you don't understand. You can collaboratively develop software with the AI and grow into an understanding of it. And I think that that's a feasible way to go. All of these things are possible, but ultimately, I think, failed that edit. Ultimately, I think that what you get out of it will be equivalent to what you put into it. There is a lot of power available to absolutely everybody, but if you want to bring a little bit extra effort and try to think computationally and try to learn how systems work, every little bit that you learn is going to be another thing that can't stymie you when you're working with the AI. Every little thing that you learn is another capability that now you can get the machine to do for you. I think that it's best to approach this if you plan to build software for other users rather than just software for yourself. I think it's best for you to think about all AI development as a learning journey, just like all software development is. Software development is, I'm super curious to see if this works. Software development is all about learning. Software development is, are we Snookered again? Nothing. Come on. Nothing again. That's 0 for 2 on the vibe
Check the
coding.
color settings.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, it could be anything with this level of interaction. It could be honestly anything.
Yeah.
I don't know what's wrong. And I mean, I don't really care. I was hoping for a cool demo that we were going to generate some code and you guys could see it working, but we're 0 for 2 on that. I should have done the safe way.
Yeah.
Vibe coded something and said, "Look what I vibe coded earlier." And I thought that I had that cracked by doing it earlier, and then we repeated the exact same thing. But sunspots got in the way. Who knows what happened? For whatever reason, it went haywire, and spent my beer money for tonight on, on some code that we're not going to use.
So the way I would modify this process to have a bit more success,
Yeah.
like not worrying about coding well or anything, just you would take your prompt and say, let's simplify the prompt, create a single page HTML with a canvas, show me. And you try it and you say, okay, draw an asteroid, draw a few more. Move them around, and you just add.
And this way it's definitely
add one by one,
work.
and then you can say, "Nope, that was wrong. Fix it." And then
give him steps. When we give him steps, it's working.
That approach will work. You will get better results that way. There's a push and pull, because if you go incrementally, that means that you could get an interim solution that won't work for your last step, and that's really important to know. So like, you're right. This is, I mean, I was just trying stuff, but you need to interact with the machine to get quality code to some extent. I think giving it a design up front and then directing it to one specific component at a time is a good way to go. Limiting its attention to that whole boil the ocean problem. Or another pattern, like as you say, getting it to generate its plan and save it as a markdown file, and then that becomes the source of truth for the AI. That's a really valuable approach. All of these, like everything that we do to put more human into the automation makes it better. And I think like the important thing is to always be improving the quality of your interaction with the AI, and always be learning better ways to prompt, better ways to use the tool to get better results. So I don't know what else there really is to say.
All that, like, because vibe coding, as like it was defined, was just like click yes, accept everything, just all right, just hand over the reins.
But
like now that we're like talking more like how it's not really beneficial to just like vibe code, and you have to like interact with it more, like what would you like call that now? Because it's not vibe coding it.
Right. So I do think, like, I don't know what the names will end up being, but I do think that, like, tool assisted software engineering is something different. Like, I do think that there's a continuum between the two. I think it's just we don't know yet exactly where the sweet spot is. I think that it would be wrong to take the exact current software development process that we have and just like add LLMs, right? So I'm going to give you a card. Your card is going to have like the responsibility to implement some small thing. You're going to then just give that to the AI, look at the output, validate the output, send it back. Like, I think there's better workflows, right? There are new and better workflows are available, but we don't know what they are yet. But certainly, I think like the only problem with that approach is efficiency. It works. Like, we know it works with people, and so we can get some of the benefit of AI by just inserting it into traditional software development. But like, what I'm really interested about is how do you get closer to vibe coding? How do you get more of this stuff done autonomously, done for you, but done in a way that is predictable, reliable, repeatable, like all the things that we want from software. And so, like, I don't know. I think we all just feel our way right now, right?
Because right now, like, it feels like to have like good outcome of like coding with like AI is you're just becoming like senior developer, like project manager, like you give it tickets, you like think about like the overall infrastructure, you give
Yep.
out tasks, and you like correct it.
It's very much feels like that. So outside of like I was reflecting on this. I was thinking about coding. I was thinking about coding a lot in preparing this. So outside of, I do a fair bit of coding for data engineering work, but like I haven't been a day, I have not been a software developer who writes code every single day for a number of years now, right? And what I have found, like when I have to code, it's harder than it used to be because I have to, I have to remind myself of syntax. I have to like look up things that I used to just know, et cetera, et cetera. But when you use the AI, you can bring that sort of software architect, solution design, project manager skill set and get very good results if you have just a little bit of software development capability. I was talking to our program manager at Gorilla 42 today, and I was really encouraging her to like take a look at AI assisted development because being a PM to a bunch of working developers puts you in such a strong position to be able to exploit these tools to like to the greatest extent because like you're used to all of those steps, right? Specifying everything down to tiny atoms, right? Getting something substandard back, yelling at people until they give you what you need, all that stuff, right? And I think that that's more what our skills, like our work will be in the future than in the past.
Yeah, I was also thinking about that point actually. Like I was thinking like about like at what point is it more beneficial just like to work on our like soft skills, just like to help us vibe code.
Well, it's
Like,
not just soft
like
skills,
it's
right?
like
I know
feels
what
like
you're
the
saying.
communication aspect to like the AI is like very important to get what you want out of it.
It is, and I agree with you. I think that the same kind of brain that makes a good software developer is still what you need in this era. It's like I would say that my entire life as coder, and it's 40 years now, the value of knowing, like memorizing the syntax has gone down every year, right? The value of just like of knowing how knowing how to what to type into the machine to get the thing to go has become less valuable every year, right? As the internet came along, as now tools that automate coding, as source control, open source, right? What has not lost value is understanding the constraints of a system, understanding the trade-offs inherent to any system, understanding the way that information must be stored, the way that information must be communicated, the way that information must be processed. Like those are things that you don't need to know all the ins and outs of like, how to be a whatever developer to have those skills. There's I think that there is a different profile for a developer 10 years from now than today. But that's, I want to so emphasize the continuity here. Like that's been true, going back to 1983. The person in 1961 with their punch cards and their machine language would have fallen on the floor to see what that person 20 years later would be able to do, right? And I just think that we're seeing the same thing. But the skill set that you needed in 1962 is so radically different from the skill set that you need today. But I think what hasn't changed is the attribute, like the attributes that define the kind of person, the kind of like the capabilities that the person needs to have to be able to drive this stuff. I don't think that's changed nearly as much as the tools that we use have changed. Anyway, this has been great.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody for coming. I
We
think
got
that's
a few thoughts if you want to
yeah,
stay.
share them, and we'll close off with your thoughts.
From this page, the one thing that you forgot is Stack Overflow. I think the AI that we have now is mostly a continuation of that,
I
more
think
than any of
that's
the other things.
such a good point. I didn't put Stack Overflow because I already had the web in 91, but yes, Stack Overflow is very, very important.
Just a site where you go and somebody had a question, somebody answered it, and now you have that question, you find the answer.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
2006.
Even last year, when I studied in the college, I still couldn't find some solution or some answers for question using ChatGPT. But when I opened the Stack Overflow, I could find, I'm like, exactly what this is. What I don't know, maybe because we still have something that it's still not so modern, some old school tasks in my college. Maybe because they want to overcomplicate us. Maybe they want to use our own brains instead of AI. That's why. But it was interesting. Yeah, this is the way how I open for myself.
Yeah.
Stack Overflow. It's just like piece of code. I'm like, yeah, this is exactly what I need. And just copy and paste and yahoo! And ChatGPT couldn't do this. And okay, but people, thanks God, people did it before.
Yeah. So the project that I worked on just for fun is I developed a VS Code, like text editor extension. And like, I'd never done such a thing, but I just go into VS Code itself. It has Copilot built in. I can just say, okay, make me a VS Code extension. And there you go. You got a few hundred lines of code. And then I say, okay, I'd like to have it make these kinds of things in there. Done. And could you make this kind of change? Done. And you just keep on going, keep on going. It's like amazing. In a couple of days, I got so much work done. And then it's like after 2 days of doing that, it just couldn't make any more changes. Like it would just try and it would be broken. Try and be broken. It's like, okay, you haven't got a clue anymore. And the only way forward is to go back and look at the code because it was working great. Clean up the code, understand the architecture, and make it so that it's very nice and neat. Now that's neat, I know where you need to change it. Change this, and now we can do it. But until you understand the code yourself and make it clean, and the other thing it does, like it'll say, okay, let's make a bit of code to do this. It'll make the most generic code that will do anything sort of related to it, and it's like this long, and you're like, okay, but this is obviously true, and this is obviously true, and this is the case, and this is not the case, and so that bit of code actually will need to be this.
Right.
The AI didn't know, but if you understand what you're writing, it's like it's making too much code.
So according to this, I have a question to you. You have two candidates for some position. One of them, it's just graduated person who really fluently can use AI tools and finish the task.
Yeah.
And another one, it's an old school guy, but at the same time, that old school guy has some knowledge of using AI, maybe not so professionally as the first one. Who you prefer?
Well, it's a good question. I don't think that that's the deciding factor, is the like your fluency or lack of fluency with AI coding tools. So since you're asking, the way that I evaluate people technically is we build a piece of software together.
Okay.
So and I'm pretty unopinionated about how people go about doing that. Nobody has ever sat down in the test and opened up like Copilot yet. I would be okay with that. It'd be very interesting. So I think that I would have a lot of questions for a developer who started to use LLM tools in an interview or test scenario. I would have a lot of questions for them because I would want to understand how they want to use it, and I would want to understand all that. But I don't think it's inherently bad.
Okay.
I think that for us, our specific scenario, like the specific work that we do, I don't know how beneficial like LLMs are, because like generally we tend to build software that is for like web-based software, right? And so we're either building something that our people have built 100 times before, or we're building something very novel. So we're either building the system that the web software interacts with, or we're building the web software. And I would be hard pressed. Like I talked about Randy's on the call. I talked about Randy's speed at the top of this session. I would be hard pressed to like. I just don't know that there would be a speed benefit for them in using that if they like are what we expect them to be when they come in the door. I don't know if there would be a speed benefit in the coding. The like we haven't cracked that open yet internally.
Okay.
Like, how are we going to change our process? How are we going to change our process in like the AI era? That's not something that we've had to be challenged with yet because we have not gotten a software problem presented to us that's going to benefit from that yet. So I know that it's coming, and I know that we all use these tools in our own way in our day to day, but like I don't think that in our shop we're not using AI to write the code at this stage. Not client code.
Okay.
Internally, sure,
Okay.
but not client code.
Okay, interesting.
Do you believe because it's a risk factor that if, like what you said earlier, it's you could be held accountable for code that isn't really like up to par what it's supposed to be?
Well, I think that's a big risk. If you are shipping code you don't understand, that's the risk that you're absolutely running. And so, like, there's no question that we're not going to ship code we don't understand. Whoever writes it, whether it's written by a machine, like, we are going to follow a process that requires human validation and human acceptance of every bit of code that goes into the system. That's not going to change, and that's not going to change for quite some time. So I think it's a risk, though. Like, there are an awful lot of people there right now who are writing production systems using AI tools, and they're getting themselves into trouble. I'm in a few vibe coding forums and message boards and whatnot, and I see people post things like, I have 2,000 users now and I don't know what to do. Because, right? Because they've got themselves into a jackpot creating a product that looks good, but now they're starting to have problems when they encounter even a tiny bit of scale. And these are like, having 2,000 users is a great problem to have. Like, that is an amazingly good problem to have, right? And you can 2,000 users in broken software. Maybe you can get to 1,000 users in working software, which would be awesome. But like the challenge is, like, do you know how to get from where you are to where you need to be? Do you, like, once you start to get users, you're kind of like, you got the tiger by the tail, and now do you know how to get where you got to go? And if the answer is no, you're snookered. Like, you're not going to have a good experience. I think you're right. I think you need to know what you're working with, or else you run a big risk. And like a security risk particularly, right? If I vibe code an application that doesn't sanitize user input, then my application is susceptible to SQL injection. I'm not going to be able to get insurance next year. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think that's a big risk. Yeah.
So what with the AI not being useful in like building code and like not having, because it's like things that are like already like you're already doing versus like things that are like very complex and new. I think like AI could be used for like documentation and like knowledge building and like onboarding. Like,
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
because a lot of places they have like knowledge is locked behind like people, and it's always like I'll get to like writing the documentation later, and they just don't have time
Yeah.
for or like they don't feel like updating it or whatnot. So I think that would be a very interesting
I've done
thing
this.
that would happen.
Like, I'll take a GitHub repo that's open source stuff, download it. And first thing I do is I say, AI, write me an architecture document and explain how this software works. It's like,
Yep.
okay. Now I can review some things and make sure that I agree, but it's like, it can take forever to try to understand a big piece of code. And it's like, it didn't take that long, and maybe it's 90% right because it has a gist of this kind of architecture.
Yeah. Yes, I don't do it a lot now, but I used to be a maintenance programmer. I used to do a ton of maintenance programming. And I with those eyes, like I look at the LLM tools and I think that they will be hugely beneficial to people who have to do maintenance on unfamiliar code. Like I can remember what it was like in 20 years ago, 10 years ago, even to get a piece of a large software project that we haven't seen before and we have to get our heads around it. And like that's a huge piece of work is just like getting your head around the software, reading through it, understanding what the components do, how they interact with each other, especially in an era in an absence of documentation. And you can just direct an LLM to generate decent quality documentation for you. It's very, very helpful. I agree. Okay. All right. I think that we're about at the end of our conversation. This was awesome. Thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. Oh, there's something in the chat. Mackenzie Stewart says, check your Chrome notification. Uh-oh. I don't see it now, Mackenzie. I think I'm okay.
I think it says like new update. Or something.
Oh, yeah, okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. Thanks, Mackenzie. I'll update my Chrome. Bye, guys.